1944. Allied factories were producing over 300,000 aircraft, more than 2 million rifles, every single month, and some of it failed. Not because the engineers were incompetent, not because the workers didn't care, but because there was no system to prove it wouldn't. Think about what that actually means. Thousands of factories, millions of parts, produced by workers who had never worked in manufacturing before, managed by supervisors who were learning as they went, and shipped to soldiers who had no way to verify what they were receiving. And the real question, the one nobody had formally answered yet, was this: how do you know the thing you built actually works? Not, does it look right? Not, did we try our best? But how do you know? What is your evidence? What is your system? Because in 1944, the honest answer was, we don't know. We hope. We inspect at the end. We throw away what fails. And we call that quality control. But it wasn't quality. It was damage limitation. And the war proved that, at scale, with consequences that cost lives. The people who survived that war came home, and some of them went back into industry, and they remembered the question nobody had answered. In 1959, the United States Department of Defense published MILQ 858. This became the world's first formal quality management requirement for military suppliers, and it was not a suggestion. It was a contract condition. If you wanted to supply the US military, you had to prove your quality system existed. You had to document your processes. You had to verify your outputs. For the first time in industrial history, quality was not just something you inspected. It was something you had to systematically manage. Then the United Kingdom followed. Then NATO followed. And the entire Western defense industry began converging on the same realization. You cannot rely on inspection alone. You cannot trust what you cannot verify, and you cannot verify what you have not documented. Trust without evidence is not a quality system. It is a gamble. And after a world war, nobody wanted to gamble anymore. The Civilian Revolution, BS 5750. But here is what most ISO training courses never tell you. Those early standards were built for a closed world, military suppliers, government contracts. They did not reach the factory making your car, the hospital managing your records, or the supplier building components for a bridge in your city. That changed in 1979. Because in 1979, the British Standards Institution published BS 5750. And that changed everything. This was the first quality management standard designed not for soldiers, but for businesses. Any business. Every business. It took the same core question from the military world. How do you know your output meets requirements? And it placed that question in front of every organization producing anything for anyone. For the first time in history, a civilian business could be formally assessed, not just on whether its products looked good, but on whether its system actually worked. Its processes, its controls, its evidence, its ability to consistently deliver what customers required. And this was the moment quality changed forever. Because quality stopped being something you checked at the end. It became something you had to build into the beginning. ISO 9001 is born. Then came the turning point. In 1987, the International Organization for Standardization took BS 5750 as its foundation and published ISO 9001. For the first time, the world had a globally harmonized quality management system standard. Not a military standard, not a national standard, but a common language the world could use when it talked about quality. ISO 9001. And today, that language is spoken by over 1.3 million organizations across roughly 170 countries. Think about that. Factories, hospitals, construction firms, logistics companies, service providers, manufacturers, all operating under the same quality logic. And here is the truth. ISO 9001 was not invented in a committee room. It was forged through decades of industrial failure into something the world had no choice but to build. What ISO 9001 actually is. Now let's clean this up. No jargon, no consultant language, just the truth. ISO stands for the International Organization for Standardization. It is an independent international body that publishes standards used around the world. And among all of those standards, ISO 9001 became the one most people know. Because ISO 9001 is about quality management systems. Not just quality, not just documentation, not just compliance, a system. And if you really understand ISO 9001, you understand one thing. This standard is not about paperwork. It is not about the certificate on your wall. And technically, it is not even about quality. It is about confidence. Your customers' confidence that what you deliver will meet their requirements. Every single time. Not only when everything is running smoothly, but when the machine breaks, when the supplier is late, when two people call in sick on the same morning. That is what this standard is really trying to build. Confidence under real-world conditions, and everything inside ISO 9001 exists to support that one objective. Now, here is something else most people miss. The ISO 9001 we use today is not the same standard that was published in 1987. It evolved. The early versions were heavily influenced by military procurement thinking, and while they were useful, they were often rigid, too procedural, too document-heavy, too easy to turn into a system that looked impressive on a shelf, but did very little in the real world. Then came the 2000 revision, and this was a major shift, because for the first time, the standard became explicit. The goal is not to build a mountain of documents. The goal is to build a documented system. That distinction matters, because the documents are not the system. They are evidence that the system works. Then came the 2010 revision, the version that matters today. And this one went even further. It introduced risk-based thinking. It pushed leadership accountability higher than ever before. And it aligned ISO 9001 with other major management system standards so organizations could integrate them more effectively. Which means the current version, ISO 9001-2015, is not old thinking in modern language. It is the result of decades of real-world learning. Tested, challenged, revised, sharpened, across industries, across countries, across organizations of every size. Now, before we go any further, I need to tell you something most ISO training will not say out loud. ISO 9001 has a reputation problem, because for every organization that uses this standard as a real operational tool, there is another one using it as nothing more than a certificate to show customers, and that creates a dangerous illusion. Because a quality management system built to pass audits, and a quality management system built to run the business, can look almost identical on paper, but under pressure, they perform very differently. One collapses the moment reality gets messy. The other keeps the business stable when things go wrong. And that is the version this series is about. Not the shelf version, not the consultant theater version, not the binder collection version, but the version that reduces defects before they reach the customer. The version that survives an audit because it survives reality. And the difference between those two systems is not paperwork. It is understanding why each requirement exists. Because once you understand the intent behind the standard, you stop building for compliance and you start building for performance. So here is what we are building together. Across 50 episodes, we are going from zero to a real working understanding of ISO 9001-2015. Not as a memorized checklist, not as a boring training course, but as an actual operating system for quality. We are going through every major clause, every major requirement, every major implementation trap. We will cover context, leadership, planning, support, operations, performance evaluation, and improvement. And we will connect them the way they actually work inside a business. We will look at real implementation examples, real audit questions, real non-conformity risks, and the mistakes that cause companies to fail audits, fail customers, and fail themselves. And by the end of this series, you will not just understand ISO 9001, you will understand how to tell the difference between a system built to impress people and a system built to actually work. So now you know why ISO 9001 exists. It exists because human beings kept failing and kept refusing to build systems that would stop them from failing again. This standard is the world's answer to that refusal. And if you use it properly, it can become one of the most powerful business tools you will ever build. This is OmniForge, and this is just the beginning. Episode 2 changes everything. I'll see you in the next one.